This week, we talk about Epic Games' exclusivity potentially going away, more PlayStation exclusives being leaked for PC this year, an update on the Knights of the Old Republic remake, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 26. I am your host, the man who, according to the Xbox Global Head, exists but should not, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who, according to that same Xbox Head, does not exist but should, Justin, better known as iamxeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Not bad. It's we've been getting some rainy weather here, so that's been making commute a little bit hectic and whatnot. But overall, the week hasn't been bad. I've recently purchased some older comic book stories, graphic novels, and getting into them has definitely been a blast. Like one of them that I purchased was Spider-Man: Kraven's Last Hunt, and even before you get into that particular story, because it was building up from some previous issues, seeing just more looks at Peter Parker as Spider-Man has just been great, because granted, he's gone through some stuff in his earlier years, but just seeing him at this point, when it's like much later, has definitely been great. So I've enjoyed that, and I haven't started the other couple comics yet, but I am looking forward to them. They're both different Batman ones, so I'm definitely looking forward to those.
Nice. Yeah, my week this year actually hasn't been too bad. It's probably the least busy week I've had, at least from what I can remember. I mean, I definitely had more going on, I think, on Saturday than anything else, because I was just trying to get stuff done ahead of Easter Sunday, which, of course, I should have made a recommendation last week about going to church on Easter, but I just completely spaced about the fact that it was Easter coming up until after I did the recording. It's like, oh well, too late now. But anyway, otherwise, not a whole lot going on. I mean, I have stuff lined up for this week, particularly in terms of like this is one of the weeks when we're leading music at our church, so that's something we got coming up on Sunday, so we got to prep a bit for that. But since my wife and I have played together for 18 years, roughly, a little less than 18 years, we've been playing together. It's not something where we have to where we have any difficulty with playing together, because we're used to it, you know. It's pretty simple from that standpoint. So it's more just selecting the songs and things like that sometimes takes a bit of time. But yeah, anyway, so what have you been sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna make a comment that I thought that's interesting, the fact that I guess because you two have been playing for so long together, it makes it easier, because you said that this week was going to be not as busy as usual, and I thought initially thinking that the fact that you do have to get ready for Sunday, it would make things more difficult.
Well, what I was saying is more that this past week was not as busy.
Oh, okay.
This current week is still not like as busy as the week leading up to my 24-hour stream or anything, but the music stuff, it's not particularly complicated, because really we usually only have to go over songs once or twice, and we really only have to go over them multiple times if we haven't played them before. And otherwise, it's like we're so in sync to where she knows exactly how I'm going to play something. Or, I mean, like, she can follow me very easily, and it's simple. Even though, of course, because guitar is a rhythm instrument as opposed to a melody instrument, for the average person who isn't used to playing with me, it may be more difficult for them to follow initially without hearing exactly how I'm going to play something. but my wife is just so used to it that it's like she knows my cues and my nonverbals and all that. So, yeah. Nice. Anyway. So, what have you been playing this past week? And also, I gotta ask, before we get into what you've been playing, if there's how many games you bought in that super cheap sale on Instant Gaming.
I bought 13. And it was roughly around the price you paid for your games. So I did, think that overall it was a pretty good bargain. So thank you for telling me about that, by the way.
Well, can you tell me which ones you got offhand, or like bring up your Steam Deck and look at which ones you added to your library?
Yeah, let me just quickly pull this up. I do actually have this here. So I bought, whoops, that is the wrong, here we go. Sit here. I bought Helldivers because that's something that definitely seemed interesting, and that was a good price. I bought Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition, Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition, Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Marvel's Avengers, Unmetal, Tales of Zestiria, a game called The Park, Trinity Fusion, Shadow of the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, and Rise of the Tomb Raider, just because those were really dirt cheap. Tomb Raider Legend, is one that I also wanted to get, one of the older ones, and I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's all of them.
Nice. Okay, now what have you been playing?
Alright, so first game that I played was Batman Vengeance, and this was something that I've been meaning to play for a while, and I originally wanted to play it because I wanted to get footage for one cutscene that played in the game, just for a video I was working on. I never actually used that cutscene because for some reason, the game, when it renders, there's like a purple bar that appears near the bottom of the screen. And it's just so weird. And I don't know why it's there, but I just said I can't use this, so I just cut it out completely. But the game, it's been a long time since I've played this game. And it's weird because I originally played the game on Game Boy Advance. I enjoyed it. That was actually one of the games that I played the most on the Game Boy Advance, apart from Metroid Zero Mission.
Right.
But years later, I finally got a GameCube, and then I bought Batman Vengeance on the GameCube, and I played it, and it's just so different. And going back to it now, it's definitely shown its age just because of the way the combat and mechanics work. Unlike other type of games where you're just fighting, when you get into a battle fight with an opponent, it turns more into a one-on-one fight, similar to, I guess, something like Soul Calibur, where it's just like that 3D type of fighting style. So it's kind of weird like that, and you do also have combo attacks to use, but I never really completely figured them all out.
Yeah.
And some of the platforming can be a bit iffy, but it definitely seems to be a whole lot faster than I remember it. And granted, I don't know if that's also because I was playing it on an emulator or not, but the game just seems to be a whole lot faster than I remember. But overall, it was a nice trip down memory lane in that aspect. Another game that I played was the last case of Benedict Fox, and I went back to this because I thought maybe I can get this to work on my Steam Deck again. Maybe if I actually try setting everything on low, maybe it'll work. It still ran poorly, so I said, fine, I'll go ahead, set this up on more capable hardware, and I tried it again. I had better frame rate initially. I was getting it to running about 60 frames per second, but then the frame rate just started going all over the place. It started going up to 75, it started dropping down to 55, and I thought this is insane, and I stopped playing it for a while. I came back again, tried adjusting some more settings. It got worse. It even dropped down to 45 frames, and it's just a complete mess no matter what I do. And the thing is, this is considered to be the definitive edition, because apparently the game also had some problems before, and even I saw on Steam forums, like going back to a year ago, people who are playing it on Xbox were saying this game has problems with it. The frame rate is a mess. So I don't know what happens or like what's going on there. But I honestly can say that I don't think I'll try to play this game anymore just because it's really not an enjoyable experience for me. So I'm gonna have to just put this one off to the side. Maybe it'll get fixed, I don't know. And I don't feel too bad about buying this game just because it was in a fanatical bundle where you just, select 3 games and you get all 3 of them for about $5. So I don't feel too bad there.
Yeah.
But on to the next game though, to cleanse my palate of what I had just played. I played a better Metroidvania that is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And I played this game before, I already completed it 100% and I loved the game. But coming back to it, especially after playing Benedict Fox, it just felt so good. The controls were amazing, it functioned as I would expect, and even on the Steam Deck, it's still running at 60 frames per second.
Nice.
And it's just so much fun. And I originally backed this game when it was on Kickstarter, I think, and I have no regrets about that because Koji Igarashi, he did so much good stuff for the Castlevania games, and he nailed it once again when he made this game. Likewise, the music is just phenomenal. When you start off on the boat, when you start, the first track that plays, it's just bliss. But overall, like, I definitely would say, play this. Don't play Benedict Fox. It's just good. And like, if you're someone who really enjoyed like Symphony of the Night, who enjoyed Aria of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow, Order of Ecclesia, like those Castlevania games, play this because it's just everything that you remember from those games. But then on to the next game that I played was Left 4 Dead. A friend of mine who has started getting into PC gaming recently, he had that game on his wish list, and I got it for him during the spring Steam sale, and we played that recently. I haven't played Left 4 Dead in a long time, and it definitely is very fun playing with friends, I'll say. It got really hectic, very crazy, and I did the stupid thing that people don't do, that people know not to do in horror films but still do it, is I went off by myself a couple times and I ended up dying.
Man, you're the black man too. I mean, you come on, man. It's like cliche as you could possibly get.
I thought that myself. I thought, how did I live that? How did I become the stereotype? But it was fun though. It was definitely an enjoyable time. And also, going back to the game, I realized that Left 4 Dead was partially the inspiration for the game that my friends had made back when we made the skit where I made my iamxeracon name, which I thought was very funny, and I understood now because I didn't play Left 4 Dead then, but I played it now. I thought, now I understand why it was so frantic, or it was supposed to be frantic when we were playing it then. So that was interesting.
Nice.
But the last game that I played was God Eater, which was a game I played with another friend because he wanted to finally get back into the game. It is, like, I think I played God Eater 3 and recorded it, but it's pretty much a Monster Hunter clone, where you just go into different missions and fight large monsters and try to get better equipment and take on even larger monsters. It definitely is a bit janky, I think, because this one was originally a PSP title that got ported. Well, it was originally a PSP title, then it got an enhanced version called God Eater Burst, but then it got a remastered port for the PS Vita and PS4, God Eater Resurrection, which then later got ported to PC. So it's a bit janky, but it's still, I would say, possibly control-wise a little bit faster paced than older Monster Hunter titles. So I do appreciate that aspect. But yeah, it was good fun.
Very nice. Yeah, couple things on some of the games you played. Well, the Benedict Fox game. It's such a shame that it runs so poorly because it looks like it looks. I mean, I love the art style and it looks like it could be really fun. But I mean, the footage you shared, it's like there was very bad frame pacing. It was just all over the place, and like I don't mind necessarily if the frame rate isn't entirely consistent if the pacing is better, but it looked like it was really bad. So that's unfortunate. Bloodstained though, it's funny, and of course you got me the game. I haven't tried it out yet, but it like just occurred to me, ROTN, SOTN. I mean, it's obviously a play on Symphony of the Night, Ritual of the Night. So that's I don't know why I missed that. And of course, watching the footage, I'm like, oh yeah, this looks. I mean, this reminds me a lot of Symphony of the Night. Of course, when I originally heard of the game, I hadn't played Symphony of the Night, but now I have and loved it. But that's another one of the many games on my list of I want to play this one, but I just don't know when I'm gonna get to it. So yeah, and then Left 4 Dead. I think I only actually played that one time, and I mean I got it on a Steam sale probably 11, 12 years ago, and I played with some friends once, and it was just like I liked it, but at the same time it was a little too tense for me because I just wasn't used to dealing with that kind of situation and everything, especially the witches. I think that's what they are, the ones that are like super creepy and they're just like rocking and then they like scream if they see you, and I can't even remember exactly what it was, but I do remember that stuff like that. It was crazy, but eventually I wouldn't mind trying that again. It's not a priority. I mean, like I think I got the two Left 4 Dead games for like, I think one of them I got for like $250 and the other one for $750. I mean, this was a long time ago. Now you could get them probably like $1 a piece, but this was 11, 12 years ago, something like that. So really long time ago. But yeah, anyway. As far as my stuff goes, I will mention first of all games that I picked up this week. So there was a couple of free games that were up on Steam. They might still be up. They just looked interesting to me. One of them is one called Boomer Road, which I haven't, be clear, I haven't touched either one of these games yet. But it was free, and I think it had like it's like anime style visuals, and it looked like it might be kind of puzzly solving, like action puzzle game almost, something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but it just looked interesting from the footage I saw. And then there was another game called Doronko Wonko, which is you play as a Pomeranian, which I hate those dogs, but you roll around in mud and then you try to create as much damage to the house as possible by shaking off all the mud, and it just gave me very much Untitled Goose Game vibes because you're just being a complete jerk. And from what my wife said, who has actually dealt with Pomeranians, not that she ever had one, they are always like super filthy animals, and so that just made it that much more funny. But I know that it's something that my kids will love to watch, and I think I'm gonna try to bring that up sometime over the weekend or something, just to, well, if I have time with the other stuff I gotta take care of. But yeah, anyway, stuff I actually bought though with that instant gaming sale. Of course, I too bought Helldivers because it was $3.13 for the complete game with all the DLC. And to be clear for anyone listening, that's Helldivers 1, the PC version, since I found out it was on PC. Though I did also end up buying the Vita version as well, just because since I got paid, I was like, yeah, I could spend $22 and get the Vita version, and that way it's another comparison I can do. And furthermore, I've been curious about it because that was where I wanted to get in the first place. But anyway, the other games I picked up, and to be clear, I bought a total of 16 games. I think, not counting the 2 free ones I got, technically I got 17 games for the 16 that I paid for. But so there was Helldivers, The Messenger, which is from the same developers who did Sea of Stars. It was the game that they did before that, like action platformer kind of game. Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga, because I wanted to get some Lego games to play with my kids. Lego Lord of the Rings, Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. And also I should clarify, with the Lego Star Wars, I did not get the Skywalker Saga because I do not acknowledge episodes 7 through 9 as actually being Star Wars. So I only got, even though I like the ones with voice acting more, I didn't want to, as far as I'm concerned, the complete saga, that's accurate. That's the complete saga, episodes 1 through 6, and that's it. No 7, no 8, no 9. Anyway, going back to this, I also got Strider, Okami HD, which I already had it on Switch, I already beat it there, so it'll be for comparison. Darksiders 3, so I already had the first 2 Darksiders games, still haven't played them, but I would like to. Proteus, which is like an indie boomer shooter, looked pretty cool, and it's fairly new. The Gunk, which I actually already have, but I bought it. I pre-ordered it before it came out because it's made by Image and Form, who did like SteamWorld Dig and stuff like that. And I played it already, but it was through like the Windows Store. I mean, it was like $2. So as far as I'm concerned, getting a Steam copy so that I can, of course, support this developer that I love, but also the game wasn't bad. I haven't tried it on Steam Deck though. Then I also got Trek to Yomi, Pray for the Gods, which is like basically Shadow of the Colossus, like an indie Shadow of the Colossus. Looked interesting. Man-Eater, which is a Metroidvania where you play as a shark eating people. I've been wanting to get that one for so long, and it was like, I think $3.38 or something like that for the game. I think I didn't get it with the DLC, but either way, it was like super cheap. Superliminal, which is a puzzle game. Bayonetta, which I already have on Wii U and Switch. I've only actually finished it on Wii U, but that's another one I'd like to do the comparison between the Switch version, especially since both are 60 frames. Although, well, it potentially could be 90 on the Steam Deck, depending on whether or not it has a cap. And then I also, like you, got Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition, which came with the base version, the original version of Ori and the Blind Forest as well. It's a freebie. So, and then one thing I bought, but I'm going to be returning, is I got the physical version of the Devil May Cry collection for the Switch. The reason I'm returning it is because I found out that unlike literally every other game I've ever purchased that has a digital download code, these actually expire. They actually expired. Every other game I've ever purchased, when they say that there's an expiration date, I use the code long after the expiration date, it works just fine. But nope, this one, they actually stuck to it. It's like, okay, number one, you have to, so the only game that's on the cartridge is the first game. Which isn't that unusual, even though it's, there's no reason they couldn't have put all 3 games on a cartridge. But they, apparently the only way to redeem the code is through the Japanese eShop. Now, I already had a Japanese eShop account. Even if I didn't, it's very easy to make one. Very, very easy to get the code entered, all of that. You don't have to understand Japanese at all. And even if you needed to, you could very easily just like bring up Google Translate and use your camera to literally translate it for you on the fly. That's the wonderful thing about technology nowadays. But this one, and I ultimately ended up seeing this from other people who purchased it. The codes actually expire, so I couldn't get 2 and 3, so I'm just gonna be returning it. And I'm thankful I did it through Amazon, so I'll get my money back. Technically, it was a used copy, but from what I've been reading, it seems like the error code that it came up with didn't say that the code had already been redeemed. It just was giving codes about the release date and stuff like that, which, from everything I could find, was saying that, yeah, these codes are expired. Expired a couple years ago. So, yeah. I'm disappointed about that, but I'll just keep my eyes peeled for a good sale on the eShop for those and buy them when they're cheap. I'm contemplating before I return it recording gameplay for the first game since it is on the cartridge, just so that I can do the comparison for that first one. But I haven't decided if I'm actually going to do that. So, but as for what I've actually been playing this week, the first game I actually don't have footage for at the moment. If I get a chance, I might record something tomorrow, but I'm not expecting to. And that is I got to play a little bit of Lego Harry Potter with one of my boys. So the whole controller issue that we were talking about before, the reason why it wasn't working is because the PlayStation and Switch controllers are not natively supported by these games. And so the Xbox controller works no problem. My Xbox Series X controller. I would use my Xbox One controller, but the left shoulder button is busted. Like, it doesn't work. And it's technically fixable, but I have to open it up, and I need, like, a special kind of screwdriver, which I might have the right head, because it's, like, one of the... I'm trying to think of what the type of head it is, but it's the one that has, like, a bunch of, like, little notches all around it, and I can't remember what it's called. At least I think that's what it was, but regardless, it's something that I never got around to fixing years ago, which is part of why I ended up buying the Series X controller in the first place. But I was able to ultimately get it working through big picture mode to use other controllers, so I could, if I did player 1 as one of the alternate controllers, then it would work, and then have the Xbox controller as player 2. But if I did it the other way around, it wasn't working. So it was just like... so we didn't get to play very much. We only got to play for maybe like 10 minutes. We basically just played through the very first level of Lego Harry Potter together. And I'm hoping to do more games like that because, you know, now that my boys are old enough that they can actually do that kind of stuff, I want to make sure that I start doing things like that with them and not just have them watch me play games. Especially doing games that they really enjoy that are easy enough and all of that. So played a bit of that. I did the footage I'm going to be showing here is just from when I recorded it directly off the Steam Deck, but I did get a chance to record the gameplay for both the Switch and Steam Deck versions of Nier Automata, because that is going to be my next comparison that goes up. And it's kind of funny. So I started recording last night. You know, I had the open time to get everything recorded. I recorded the entirety of the prologue on the Switch. And then I booted up the Steam Deck, and even though this is technically the 4th time, let's see here, on the Steam Deck I've gone through the most of the prologue. I went through most of it once, and then I stopped, just because it was just when I was initially testing the game. And then I went all the way through it last week or a couple weeks ago, whenever it was that I did that. But then when I went to record, doing the overhead view, the very first run through, I died during the flying section, which I have never died in all the times I've gone through it. I did get one of the endings as a result of that. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So now I have that ending on my profile. And then I figured, okay, initially I would just, leave it as is and, put an F on the screen and then fast forward through the stuff leading up to that and then, record the rest of it. So then I get all the way to the buzzsaw bosses that are like immediately before the big giant robot. And I died there. Once again, I've never died during the prologue before this. And this time I died twice in a row. And it was almost time for me to go to bed, so I was like, okay, I'm done for tonight. I did end up getting a chance to record it today and got through the entirety of the prologue, so I got all that recorded. But yeah, I mean, I still think this game is fantastic. And of course, like, even though the Switch version is only 30 frames per second and obviously doesn't look as good as the Steam Deck, it still plays really well. And like, I didn't feel like it was too slow or anything, even though it definitely felt significantly more responsive, and obviously it looks a whole lot better on the Steam Deck. But yeah, like, it's legitimately a great game, everything I've played so far. And I, I looked at my Switch hours, and I have like 20 hours on the Switch, but at least now, whenever I play on the Steam Deck, because of the fact that I hadn't played any further than just to the point when you can first save, I already have one of the endings on my profile, so... and one that I wouldn't have gotten, I wouldn't have otherwise, because I never died in the prologue before that. But anyway. Other games I played, I did end up playing some Helldivers 1. And I will say right away, it is not recommended to try and play it solo. The enemies are too aggressive, and it is too difficult to get through entirely on your own, at least when you're low level. It might be easier when you get higher level. And also when you don't make the mistake of trying to dodge attacks when you can't actually dodge. So, because I'd been playing so much Horizon Forbidden West, the button I normally press to dodge, all it does is you dive. So you dive down like you dive down to get, so you can crawl on the ground. In Helldivers, there's no dodging. It's not like you dive and then you get right back up immediately. It's no, you dive and then you're on the ground. And there was numerous times where I tried to dodge and it didn't actually dodge. I mean, I just dove to the ground and then made myself easier prey. So that didn't work so well. But thankfully, one thing that the game does have is it does have automatic matchmaking. Like, people can join you anytime, even if you're not playing with friends, even if you're not in a multiplayer. Because, like, if by default, when you go into the single player, anybody can join you who wants to join you. Like, if you go in your single player, then someone can jump into multiplayer and they'll see your mission up there and say, oh, I want to join this person, and they can join you. And if you have a second person, at least these easier early missions, it's completely doable. And thankfully, I did have people show up on a couple of my games who were able to help me out with getting through missions, and it helped a lot. But yeah, so it's a fun game. I really like the gameplay. I figured I probably would, having seen Helldivers 2. And I mean, Helldivers 2 is probably more my speed, just because I like the full 3D, third person kind of deal a bit more for an action game. But I do really like this. This is still very fun, and it's just one of those where the main thing is you have to have at least one other person with you, because otherwise, unless you somehow manage to avoid detection by enemies, you're probably not going to be able to complete objectives, because you'll have enemies coming after you and then they just kill you, and you only get like one respawn until you've completed an objective. So anyway, but yeah, it's fun. I checked it out a bit on Vita as well, and I don't have any footage recorded of that. Definitely, I'm pretty sure it's only running at 30 frames per second. Definitely downgraded visuals, especially the shadows are like really bad. But honestly, the biggest issue I have with it is because the fact that there's no and that there aren't extra shoulder buttons to the actions that are normally. So normally you have the right and left button actions, the right and left shoulder buttons. Those are for reloading and then like calling in strikes or supplies and things like that. And then you use the triggers for shooting and then for throwing grenades. But on the Vita version, because it doesn't have the 2 shoulder buttons on each side, you use those shoulder buttons for firing and throwing grenades. Or, I'm sorry. No, for firing and calling in like supplies and stuff. But then you have to use the rear touchpad, swiping down on that in order to throw grenades or reloading. So it's just a little awkward because I've never been a fan of the rear touchpad, and even though like I have a grip that gives me triggers for those, because of the fact that it's swiping down rather than just pressing it, the triggers don't do anything. Because the way the triggers work on this grip is that when you press them, it presses up against the rear touchpad. So anything where it's just a touch function, like a single tap, it works perfectly, and then you have the triggers rather than having to use the touchpad. But since it doesn't, I mean, since it requires that you swipe down, it doesn't work that way. So it still provides a better grip, but it's not great from that standpoint. Either way, the Steam Deck version, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was running locked to 90 frames per second. It's only 720p, it doesn't do 800p. It's kind of funny, though. Obviously, it's because it was before they started really doing official support on PC, but the PC version does not give PlayStation buttons when you play with a PlayStation controller. It only does Xbox buttons, so that's kind of funny.
Interesting.
But that is unless I was playing. It's possible that I was. It's possible I may have been playing in big picture mode, and if that was the case, well, no, that still shouldn't matter. That only matters if you're playing with a non-Steam game usually. But anyway, none of that really matters. Next game that I played of my new games was The Messenger, and I actually ended up playing that quite a bit. I mean, I'm still. I don't know if you've played The Messenger at all, but it's. I don't know what exactly it's supposed to be inspired by. I'm guessing probably
Ninja
Gaiden. That's kind of what I was thinking, but I've never played Ninja Gaiden, so I can only assume that's what it's inspired by. Definitely reminds me in some ways of like Metroid and that sort of thing as well, but I wouldn't quite call it Metroidvania because there's not really any backtracking when you get new abilities. So, but anyway, what I played of it, I really like. One of the things I liked best, though, was the very beginning of the game and throughout, really. I immediately recognized the music because this music is reused in Sea of Stars for some of it. And I mean, it's slightly different because at least in the early part of the game, you're playing what's supposed to be essentially an 8-bit world. And then when you get further along, you're like doing time travel or whatever, and you're in a 16-bit world. So I'm sure that the music will sound a bit different when you're at that point. But I have enjoyed what I played, so I'm still in the 8-bit portion of the worlds. But I think it's a pretty solid game. Everything I've played so far, I've been enjoying. It was like $2. I mean, that's my kind of price. Like, I think the most I spent on a game was $4.49, I believe. So, and I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember which game it was. Oh, I think that was for Darksiders 3. I think that was the only one that I spent that much for. The rest of them were like $2 or $3. So, I mean, bunch of games spent. It was like very little on every single game that I bought, and there were more games I considered buying, but ultimately decided not to. I might go back and check and see if the sale is still going on, and if it is, I might grab a couple more Lego games, just because, $2, that's hard to turn down.
Oh yeah.
I was going to check and see if I checked to see if Ori and the Will of the Wisps was on sale, and it was, but it wasn't cheap enough to. I mean, it wasn't that cheap. Like, it was probably still. I think it was maybe like 20-30% off. instead of, you know, the 90% off or whatever that Blind Forest was. It was ridiculous. Those prices were great. Especially Helldivers. Like, I really did not want to spend $40 on that game. And technically I did on PlayStation, on Vita, but since I had $17 in credit, it's like, I just look at it as, okay, so I got both games for, I mean, both versions for $40. And it does have cross-save, but it looks like it's probably just between PlayStation platforms. Because there's no cross-save on PC as far as I can tell. I mean, you know, apart from maybe being able to transfer your save, which that might be possible, but I don't have it on PlayStation 4, so I wouldn't see the point. I'm not going to buy it on PlayStation 4. Yeah, just absolutely no point. Especially because it's not like I've made enough progress anyway. I've played more on PC or on Steam Deck than I have anywhere else. But anyway, that was basically all the main stuff that I played. Apart from the obvious one, which is Horizon Forbidden West, which I played a lot of. That was like what I spent the majority of my gaming time playing. Because between, like, I played a decent amount just on our trip back from Kansas City, because we went out there on Friday for my son's doctor's appointment. And, like, the Steam Deck, it's still not the best place to play for when you're dealing with combat. But when you're just doing some exploring or, like, you know, doing puzzles and that sort of thing, it's perfectly fine. And that's mostly what I was doing. I mean, there was some combat I got into, but most of what I was doing was otherwise. But I ended up just playing almost exclusively on my desktop. If I play it on my Steam Deck, it was mostly just streaming from my PC to my Steam Deck. So, I mean, that's a much better experience that way. I like the fact that I have the option to play on the Steam Deck, but it's not the best way to play. I would much rather play on my PC where I'm getting, you know, good, you know, over 60 frames per second, and where, you know, it looks really good and everything else. It's just a better experience all across the board. And I'm having a really good time with it. It's a fun game. I feel like in some ways this might be my favorite right now of the paint by the numbers type of open world games. Like, I think that it's probably the best designed of those. I still think that there are areas in which they could improve it further, particularly in giving people the ability to climb anything, like Breath of the Wild, because that's the one thing that Breath of the Wild still does way better, is just being able to climb anything. And yeah, I mean, like, Tears of the Kingdom, they kind of broke things further in some ways by making it so not only could you climb basically anything, but you could also ascend through the ceilings of rooms, you know, as long as there's something above to ascend to, and you had enough room to actually do that. But anyway, I really enjoy Horizon Forbidden West. I'm having a great time with it. I'm trying my best to not let myself get in this mode of trying to rush through it. And, you know, like, when occasionally I feel a little less like I want to actually do side quests, and just focus on having a good time, letting myself take as much time as I need to, because while I don't know yet if I'm going to try and get all achievements, and even if I do, it probably wouldn't all be at once, because one of those achievements requires an ultra hard playthrough, which I would only do on New Game Plus. I still want to, you know, make sure that I do basically my 100% run through the game this time around, because that's what, you know, like, I'm enjoying it enough to where I want to go do all the different things. The side quests, I'm not entirely sure if I want to do all of them, because I think that it's not really necessary, but at the same time, they're also really fun. So, yeah, that is basically it for me. I mean, I played more this week than I planned to. Initially, it was like, I'm just playing Horizon Forbidden West, and then I got all these cheap games, and I decided to try out a few of them, and I still want to play, like, almost all of them. I mean, like, the only thing I think I probably won't actually play, apart from doing a comparison, is Ori and the Blind Forest. Just because it's like, it already looks great and runs at 60 frames on the Switch. I don't really have a reason to replay it. I'm going to eventually play Will-O-the-Wisps, but I have that on Switch as well. It's on the physical cartridge, and as far as I know, that also runs at 60s, so I don't have any reason to necessarily play it on the Steam Deck, apart from for the comparison. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, I got a couple of questions. So I guess the first question I have is for Devil May Cry. Is the physical collection only available in Japan? Okay, I see.
Yep, import only.
Wow, that's a shame.
Yeah.
And
I mean usually it doesn't matter too much, but I mean, because you can redeem the codes, but no, not this time.
It's odd too, because normally with Japan, at least with games that I've seen, they'll actually have most of the games on the cartridge.
Right.
So it's definitely weird that this one doesn't have them all. That's definitely odd to me.
It's just Capcom being Capcom. That's how I see it.
That definitely sounds about right. Regarding Nier, you said you put in 22 hours. So have you completed the game yet?
No, I was nowhere near completing it.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time wandering and stuff.
So you haven't gotten to the end of...
So, no. I mean, basically, like... Alright, I'll just say, mild spoilers for anyone who hasn't played Nier here. I got to the point where... basically it's kind of indicated that there's more going on with... like, I got to where there's, like, the alien ship or whatever underground, and then you encounter the other androids that are... I think they call themselves Adam and Eve or something, if I remember correctly. I'm probably remembering wrong. It's been a while.
That's right.
And I got a little past that, and like into... I can't remember if the robot village, if that was before that point, wasn't it?
The one where you go in and they're like, at first they're friendly and they want to worship you. Is that the one you're talking about? You're talking about. Never mind. Forget what I just said.
Well, I mean,
you're talking about the what, like the forest one?
Yeah, the forest village, and it's hard to remember the exact order of everything. All I specifically remember was that there was an alien ship thing with Adam and Eve, and then there was the other. There was some that I played past that, and I don't really remember exactly where I got. The problem is that there's kind of a disjointedness there, because I played a lot for a while, and then I stopped playing, and then I came back to it, and I couldn't remember exactly where to go, and I think I got further, but I just wasn't, like, fully sticking to the game, like, just because, I had other things I was playing, so... Anyway, yeah, I'll pretty much... I'm more or less starting over on the Steam Deck, but it's for better performance, and depending on how the game works on PC itself, whether or not it has a frame cap, you might be able to get an even better frame rate on PC. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Only reason I'll say is because if you haven't finished it yet, and you do intend on finishing the game, I was just going to say, you might think that everything is over and you're done with it, but you're not. So you need to keep going. Yeah,
right.
That's all I'm going to say.
I know that there's like a bunch of endings, and that Most of them you get like after you finish the game the first time. But yeah, that was essentially the gist of what I understood anyway. Like I was expecting that it would be multiple playthroughs, or however that works specifically. Kind of like how it's similar to that, and I'm not going to say too much about the game in case you haven't played it, but the Zero Escape series, and there's like you get one ending and that's not actually the end, and you have to play a bunch more in order to get all the various endings that ultimately get you the true ending, and so on and so forth. And it kind of does similar things for the second and third game. But
Okay.
anyway, cool. Anything else before we get into news?
No, I think we can dive right in.
All right. So this week we had kind of a variety of different pieces of news. One of the first topics that I wanted to talk about was the idea of Epic Games exclusivity going away. And actually, I forgot to put that in our list of topics for some reason. But, oh no, I did have it in there. I just had it low on the list. So the gist of this is essentially that there have been a bunch of indie developers in particular who feel like they've been kind of burned by doing the Epic Games exclusive thing because the games haven't sold. And a lot of this also ends up being in large part because it's just very poorly advertised with Epic Games. Like the video that I watched from Cult of Mush, which is a YouTube channel that does lots of videos talking about free games and all of that. Free games on a daily or weekly basis. Anytime he comes across free games on PC, he shares about those. But one of the things that he pointed out is like he had a friend who, the second that Final Fantasy VII Remake came to Steam, he was like, yo man, this game's on PC now, I'm gonna get it, and all this stuff. And he tells his friend, it's been out on PC for 6 months. It was just on the Epic Games Store exclusively. And the fact that people, normies wouldn't necessarily know that it was already on PC, I imagine it's probably pretty similar with indie games. Some of these things just haven't been working out very well. I'm going to just read directly off of PC Gamer, kind of gives some highlights of what they had to say. So, quoting from them, in an interview at last week's Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, the developers behind indie sensation Slay the Spire and Darkest Dungeon said that the deal some small developers have come to rely on for funding in recent years, like Epic Games Store exclusives and Xbox Game Pass, are no longer what they once were. I talked to at least 5 small teams, like 35 members and under, during GDC, and they're like, cuts, funding canceled, talks that were going on for a year canceled, said Casey Yano, the co-founder of Slay the Spire studio Mega Crit. It sounds like it's shite. We're definitely very privileged to be able to self-fund, otherwise I'd be very, very, very scared right now. So, in essence, the idea here is that there used to be a point when Epic Games, Xbox Game Pass were oftentimes like a way that indie developers could get their games out there because they just didn't have the funding otherwise. But things are, because of how the economy is right now across the board, especially in North America, but it's really to some degree all over the world. This type of funding isn't happening as much anymore. There's all this, the cost of everything has gone up, and the difficulty to fund these projects has become apparent. And as a result, so many of these developers are just starting to recognize that maybe this is not even going to be an easy thing for them to do. The gist of it is that Epic is not necessarily funding these games the way they used to. They're not providing these deals to indie developers, so it's more difficult for these indie studios to stay open because they just don't have the funding. And if that's going to be an issue, then Epic Games exclusives are very likely going to be less of a thing going forward. Now, of course, this is not something that is like, oh, we're definitely not going to be exclusive anymore. That you know, like Epic is going to start putting all of their exclusive games on Steam. You know, like put the Kingdom Hearts games on Steam and put Alan Wake 2 on Steam. But that is the direction that things could be moving because of the fact that Epic is less willing to put out the money for these things. So I babbled a ton here. I didn't do a very good job covering this, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I had several different thoughts, and it's, well, I'll get to this point in a bit, but I'm not surprised about this happening because Epic has said, and I think this has been for at least the past few years, is that these games it's taking a whole toll. These exclusives are costing them a lot, and it's taking a toll, and they've been doing this at a loss for the past few years. So I'm not surprised that they can't just keep hemorrhaging this amount of money, especially since it's in. I mean, I also wonder if this is also going to impact them in this regard, is also the free games they also keep giving away, because while people they put, I can't remember what the survey was or what the statistics were, but something about the amount of people who go to Epic and get the free games. There's such a high number of them that do that, but they don't actually come back and buy anything from the store. They just come there for the free games and that's it. So that's definitely going to impact them in the long run, and especially with them trying to buy the exclusives. You mentioned about normies who might not know games coming out to PC. That's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is that people just don't care to buy games from Epic. Like, and going back to the Kingdom Hearts example, it's very funny. The timing is impeccable because just before we were starting to get set up, one of my friends sent me a message in the Discord chat saying that Kingdom Hearts is on sale 60% off, either 40% or 60%, I can't remember, off on Epic right now. And he doesn't want to buy the game, but he feels very tempted to buy it on Epic. Another friend of mine comments saying, and it would be very funny if they did this just before it gets released on Steam. He said not confirmed or anything, but it'll be very funny if that happens. But yeah, it's just definitely a thing though where people are avoiding Epic. Me personally, I'm avoiding Epic because I don't want to buy anything there. I don't like Epic Game Store. Right. So I'm not going to spend. It's not a matter of I don't know about the game. It's not a matter of I don't like the game, because there are games that are, or at least have been, on the Epic Game Store that I just didn't buy because I did not want to buy the games there. For example, Hades. Hades was an Epic Store exclusive. When I saw the trailer for it initially, I was thought, wow, this looks great. I would love to play this. But it was only available on the Epic Game Store. I had to wait until it came to Steam before I could buy it. And I'm willing to wait for a game to come out before I buy it, because even if I can't get it right away, even if I have to wait, it's worth it for me. Even if I have to even pay a little bit more because a game will be likely on sale on Epic, I'll wait for it to come. I'll wait for it to be on sale on Steam, or if it's their GOG, instead of buying it on Epic. I don't even go to Epic for free games. That's how much I avoid it. But in other aspects regarding how this impacts the developers, it definitely is. I definitely understand on that aspect. They're being given a bad hand. But like I said, for Epic, I'm not too surprised there. But with Games Pass, I am a bit surprised because Microsoft, I believe, has said that there has been some profitability with Game Pass, so I would imagine that there should be enough revenue coming in that helps support it, but I guess not, or they just don't want to invest in these games going to Game Pass. But I mean, at least it's not something where the games are exclusive to Xbox Game Pass, so I can at least appreciate that there. But the article did mention early access, and that, you know, some devs have struggled with games being on Steam Early Access. And I think another reasoning for that is that some people may or may not want to buy a game just because, you know, it's in an incomplete state. And I do agree with that sentiment. I don't necessarily buy games that are in early access because I don't know how they're going to turn out. I don't know if the developers will even stop working on the project, because that has happened in the past with games being in early access, which is why I don't necessarily trust it. Granted, I, you know, did buy what's it called?
Pal World.
I bought Pal World. I bought that. I bought Vampire Survivors, and those two games, you know, those are doing pretty well for me. I am enjoying them, so I think that was pretty good, especially with Vampire Survivors. I got that when it was discounted, as cheap as it is already. I got it discounted for about $2.50. So I mean, I was gonna complain, but it's still just a gamble. And, you know, there is no real solution for what developers should do, because I mean, on one hand you could say, well, just if you're worried about getting the funding, go to some crowdfunding site like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. That's not necessarily a guarantee that you'll find enough people to invest in your games. I mean, sure,
Right.
that is possible, but it's also not possible. And some people, they might not want to invest or support the games on a crowdfunding site. I mean, some people might want to, some people might think, I don't know, like, the game's not even out yet. We don't know the state of the game. The game could not even be fully funded, and the fact that I spent money in this and then completely lost it, it's completely unpredictable, because you could have cases where you have something like Bloodstained, where it is successfully crowdfunded, it is a complete product, and it does well. Or you could have something that is like, oh gosh,
Mighty Number 9.
Mighty Number 9. You could have something like that. So I can understand why gamers would be skeptical about supporting any type of game. Like, I mean, even with me, some games I look at and I think, yeah, I would probably crowdfund that. And I mean, I've crowdfunded several different games. I don't know what's going to happen with them. I mean, so far I'm still getting updates and still being shown, you know, new footage. So it looks like things are going well. You can never really predict how something's going to turn out, so I do understand that aspect. So overall, I guess it's just hard. There's just no real answer here. But I sympathize with developers if they're trying to find funding, but this just is a bad example. But one last thing I do want to say is that it's, at least for this article, it was only stating about funding going away for indie devs, and it just made me wonder, would Epic really cut funding for indie devs just to put that money toward AAA devs to keep their games exclusive? Would
Yep.
they do something that underhanded?
Oh, of course they would. or at least to have timed exclusivity with, like, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is probably going to happen. I'm just assuming it's going to happen, even though I hope it. I don't want it to. But yeah. Yeah, and I don't know why I didn't think about the fact that obviously, you know, people also don't buy from Epic because they don't want to buy from Epic. Not just because they don't know, because that's exactly been my philosophy. I mean, the closest I ever came to buying something from Epic was when I was very seriously tempted to buy Final Fantasy VII Remake on there. And then I found out literally that same day that it was releasing on Steam. In fact, I think it either released on Steam that same day, or because I think it was a shadow drop. Well, it was either a shadow drop that day or it was a shadow drop the following day. But it was like as soon as it was coming to Steam, it was like, okay, never mind, I'm not doing Epic. And I've stuck with that, and I don't think that there's anything that I want badly enough to do Epic. Like, the only thing I would say tempts me somewhat would be Kingdom Hearts 3, because I've never had a chance to play that, because I don't want to get it on PS4 when, you know, there is a PC version that exists, and that's definitely going to run better, look better. Might even run well on Steam Deck. I can't remember if I've ever looked to see how the performance is on that, but I would imagine it probably runs well since it's a PS4 game. I mean, like, Alan Wake 2 is a little bit tempting, but I'm okay with skipping that right now, or, you know, at least waiting for it, because even if it stays on the Epic Game Store, I want to play through all the Remedy games before I play Alan Wake 2, since right now I've only played Alan Wake 1 and the base game for Control, and I still have the Max Payne games and Quantum Break. I think that's all I have. It's just those 4 games. But I mean, it's like, that's, you know, 4 games right there that I haven't played. So before I even touch Alan Wake 2, and who knows, maybe by the time I actually get through those games, Alan Wake 2 will be on Steam. Not expecting it, but, you know, I mean, Ubisoft and EA have put their games on Steam, and I never thought that was going to happen. So, either way, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, as I've long stated, I'm not a fan of Epic Games' exclusivity, because I think that their launcher is garbage. I think that their security is garbage, and I just don't trust them. So, I will hold off as long as humanly possible, and more likely than not, I just won't ever go over there, because there hasn't been anything that's so tempting to where I'm like, I have to. But if I did, it would probably be a situation where I would say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab the games that I absolutely want on here, and then I'll just deal with the repercussions if they end up coming over to Steam. And hopefully it won't be like, I buy them and then the very next day they come to Steam, because then I would hate myself. But it's not like I don't have enough games to play anyway, especially since, you know, I just added another 16 games, 17 games. Well, 18 including the 2 free ones. Or 19 including the 2 free ones. But, yeah. Anyway, any other thoughts on that before we move on to the next topic?
No, sir.
All right, so previously we had spoken about Bloodborne Kart coming to PC. You know, in the trolley way of saying Bloodborne's coming to PC. We actually got an update on Bloodborne Kart, because originally it was supposed to be coming out the end of January 2024, which we're already a couple months past. And then it just, there was nothing was said about it for a while. And turns out, of course, that Sony told them, you have to pull the Bloodborne branding from this game before you release it. Even though they were releasing it for free, it looked fantastic and everything else. So they had to change the name. It's now called Nightmare Kart. It's coming out the end of May. Will be free on PC. I can't remember if it's, I think it's coming to something other than PC, but I don't remember what. And they had to change, you know, characters, so now the characters can't look like they're from Bloodborne and everything. But it still looks fantastic. Basically PS1 inspired visuals, and I'm really interested in checking it out for sure, especially because it's, you know, free. I mean, looks pretty cool. Any thoughts on this?
I just want to quickly say that it is just on PC. It's just going to be on Steam and itch.io.
That's right. It was just 2 different stores on PC. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely a shame that the developer, you know, received that DMCA basically, but
yeah,
you know, at least they, you know, wasn't necessarily that completely hostile It just
Right.
like, hey, you can't use our branding. So they were able to go, just remove all references to Bloodborne, but just still keep the game there. So people will still have that same experience, just they won't have the characters and probably the locations as well that would be used here. But also, based on the article, it does seem like there is quite a bit of content there. I mean, what was it, 16 tracks, I believe, or something like that. But yeah, 16 maps and even a full campaign with boss fights. So like, that's still pretty good, especially for a free game. I mean, I'll probably still check it out even with Bloodborne, being removed in name. But hopefully that means maybe Sony is trying to do something similar to Nintendo, where they pull a takedown claim only to release something soon or announce something soon. Because if they said, hey guys, that game you've always wanted, well, we've got Bluepoint here to do the same thing they did with Demon Souls, and they're gonna do that with this game that you wanted us to do. So here it is, PS5, PC, you're welcome. So hopefully that's what it means.
I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, I'm not getting my hopes up by any stretch, but I wouldn't put it past them. The one thing that I don't understand the most about it, and that's why I think almost your theory would make more sense, is the fact that this same developer put out a PS1 visuals version of Bloodborne that they created.
Yeah.
You can still get it. I'm actually really considering just going ahead and grabbing it, so that way, in case Sony decides, oh, we're gonna make you pull this down, it's like, well, this way, we already have it. I'm just gonna go and download it now, actually, because
yeah, definitely go ahead. I did that.
I mean, like, I'm very curious about that, because of course, I mean, I love these demakes. I think it's so cool when people do that. And even though, like, I'm not necessarily super wanting to play Bloodborne, just because once again, I want to get through at least one Souls game before I start a new one. But it's like, it's still, I don't really understand why it is that they would, have them change, take off the Bloodborne branding, unless they are re-releasing Bloodborne in some form. So,
yeah.
Hopefully that's the case, because my guess is that at this point it's like, okay, it's been years since they did the Bloodborne remake. When did that first come out? Looks like 2020, like late 2021, early 2022. So, yeah. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting thing, but yeah, I love it anytime someone does a remake. It's always just really fascinating to see how they can take a modern game and pare it down to look like a PS1 game, especially when they do it with like an actual action game, because that just makes it so much more interesting, because PS1 had so few games like that. And even when they did, there was too often you were stuck with fixed camera angles, and sometimes they were just like really awkward. And even if you could rotate the camera, it ended up not working super well. Even if you had the second stick, like you have a game like Parasite Eve 2, which bafflingly they switched over to tank controls after not having tank controls in the first game. Because obviously they were trying to make it more like Resident Evil, but it's like the first game controlled great, and the second game they switched to tank controls for some reason. And then even if you were using a DualShock, you had to use tank controls. You couldn't, you couldn't use it in any other. It didn't make sense to me. It took a game that I was really excited to play and made me not interested in playing it for a long time. And I mean, I have it now, and eventually I'll try to go through it, just get used to the tank stuff. But yeah, Yeah, either that or, well, I probably, at some point, I need to just probably try to emulate it through DuckStation and see how it looks and plays that way, because I imagine that it will look and run better anyway. And who knows, maybe even there'll be some way that I can like have a mod that makes it possible to not have to deal with hand controls. I kind of doubt it though. But anyway. Any other thoughts on that before we move on to the next topic?
No, sir.
So speaking of Bloodborne on PC, which, you know, once again, obviously apart from this PSX demake, we don't actually have. There have been some more potential leaks for PlayStation games coming to PC later this year. And so this is a Twitter user called Silk Knife. I'm assuming that it was misspelled like that on purpose, because that is the Twitter handle, is Silk. It's like night, but instead of having GHT, it's GTH. So Silk Knife. Previously on February 27th, prior to when it was officially announced, leaked that Ghost of Tsushima was coming to PC this year. And something else he had actually said along with that was that PlayStation would be revealing the sequel mid-year on one of their PlayStation events, presumably the PlayStation Showcase, which is typically where they show their first-party stuff. The last year they didn't show anything first-party, apart from like a remaster or something. But this same person has also said that we're going to be getting The Last of Us Part 2 on PC, and that it's going to be announced soon. I think they said it might. I think, did they say it was this month in April that they were supposed to be announcing that?
I gotta remember when the tweet was made, because depending on when it was.
Oh no, he said next month.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Okay, so he said in March that it was next month, so it should be sometime this month. And, but yeah, so the interesting thing about all of this is that it looks like it could very well be a situation where they announce, where next month, there's something else that we're not specifically going to get into, but there's supposed to be a PlayStation either showcase or state of play in May, which would make perfect sense, because that's about the time that they did it last year for their showcase, where, at least in his original tweet where he talked about Ghost of Tsushima coming to PC before it was officially revealed, he had talked about Ghost of Tsushima 2, or whatever the sequel is going to be called, being revealed at a mid-year event. May could be considered mid-year, so this next showcase, presumably, they could be announcing Ghost of Tsushima 2, or whatever the sequel is called, then also announcing Last of Us Part 2 coming to PC, which, bleh. But then at the same time, and they could also, based on the previous leaks we've seen, that could be an opportunity where they'd announce Gravity Rush 2. That's what I'm hoping for, of course. But of course, right now, we're not really going to get too much into the whole showcase thing, because most of the stuff was kind of like, meh, who cares? But this is all potentially relevant. Now, I mean, of course, the Ghost of Tsushima sequel, I'm not expecting that even if they announce that they're going to be announcing that it's coming to PC right then and there. It'll, be like a down the line. Either that, or if they announce it coming to PC, it's going to be like and then sometime later. But more likely than not, they're not even going to announce it coming to PC. It'll just come when it comes, whatever that happens to be. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Though I'd be fine if it wasn't until next year, because I want to replay Ghost of Tsushima first. But what this person also said, and I didn't see the full context of this because the link basically just showed the one tweet, but he said that he believes the Uncharted series So the Nathan Drake collection, first 3 games, is supposed to bring to PC. Or it's supposed to come to PC and PS5. Now, that one, it just seemed more like he's just responding, okay, there's very likely this will happen. In which case, it may not be a leak so much as this is just his general thoughts, or her general thoughts. I didn't actually check to see if it was a girl or a guy. But either way, it would be great if they did bring the first 3 Uncharted games to PC. Because they're great games. They're solid games. Mouse and keyboard would be great for those games. They'd be perfect for a mouse and keyboard. Especially because most of the action stuff you're doing is shooting anyway. So I could see that working extremely well. But even with the controller and, now that they're actually doing like gyro aiming, gyro aiming makes a big difference in those games. Because when I played through Uncharted 1 on what at least initially is the hardest difficulty that you can get without beating the hardest difficulty, which is crushing, I believe is the hardest difficulty, because I did it before. I was aiming to try to get the platinum trophy in that game. So when I was doing crushing difficulty, I remote played with my Steam Deck just so that I could have the gyro aiming while playing. And I wasn't actually playing off of the Steam Deck screen. I was looking at my monitor. So the PS4 is connected to the monitor, so the picture is all, perfectly in sync with the movements, but then I had the gyro aiming to make it easier because crushing difficulty is very difficult. So, anyway. All that being said, what are your thoughts on these various potential games coming over?
Yeah, I apologize. I should have added a little bit of explanation for the Uncharted part, just because I actually also had to ask about what was going on, because when I saw the tweet in the Discord server, I couldn't, access the full thread, since, Twitter only now shows you like one specific tweet instead of a whole thread. But basically, what I was told was that someone had posted or said something like there was a rumor going around that that the Uncharted collection was coming to PC, and so someone, I think, had tagged this person in it, asking if they was sure or not, and then that was when they replied to it. So I think That's how that happened there. So I'm hoping that is definitely the case. I definitely would like to see those games come over, because I would have a lot of more interested in playing those games than playing the newer titles. And I guess especially since I think for these games it probably would be best to play them in order. So I would like to do that. I would gladly sacrifice, and you know what, I'm willing to take this L, because I know that PlayStation gamers, brag about the exclusives they have. I would love them to keep Last of Us Part 2, because I would gladly be humbled and say, you know what, maybe we won't get everything from PlayStation. I will do that if it means that we actually get Gravity Rush 2. I want that to be the sequel they bring over. Don't bring over that sequel, bring that one over. So I do hope that we do get that. And overall though, I hope that we are, you mentioned this before, it definitely is likely based on Sony's track record. But I do hope we get something next month or so, and that we get a lot of information, something that is, pretty good. It would be nice if we heard something about Ghost of Tsushima, and if they wanted to say, it would be funny if they did the same thing again, where they have coming to PS5 and PC, and then just yank it down again. That would be hilarious if they did that.
Well, I think that this time they wouldn't, because like what happened with Demon's Souls was that the original trailer, it was all PS5 trailer, and at the end there was like a little asterisk on the bottom of the screen that said also coming to PC. But this was before they really started doing the whole slate. Yes, we had some releases before that, but it was before they said that it was going to be the whole slate. And in this case, like, when they did the announcement of the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, which is 4 and whatever the other one's called.
Thief's End? Or well, no, that is...
No. It's, gosh, I have it in my Steam library. Give me 1 second. I was just looking at it earlier. Uncharted. Way down here. My ridiculously long list. Lost Legacy, that's what it's called. So, but when they did that trailer, they said coming to PlayStation 5, then flash like another picture, and PC. And I mean, you know, like they didn't try to hide it at all, and they haven't been hiding that fact anymore because they've already made it clear these games are coming to PC. So I could see them doing that with whatever the next. I mean, you know, with the Ghost of Tsushima sequel, my thought is it's going to be one of two things. Well, probably one of three things. Either one, they're just going to stick to their normal strategy where they don't even announce the PC version initially, even though we know it will come eventually. 2 is they announce the PS5 version in the showcase, but don't mention the PC version until they do a separate blog and say that, yes, this will also be coming to PC. And then 3 is they just straight up, right in the trailer, show PS5 and PC. And, but I think that more likely than not, it's going to be 1 or 2. 1 seems the most likely just based on their patterns previously, but I would love it if this was the first time that they actually basically acknowledged this is going to be day and date, or at least that the window is shrinking. That would be my... I would love that, but I'm just not getting my hopes up because there's no reason to. You know, they haven't demonstrated with anything other than Helldivers that it was going to be a day and date release, and so I'm not assuming anything on that front. What I will say though, a thought I just had, and I can't remember if we had talked about this possibility when we talked about Gravity Rush 2 coming to PC before, PC and PS5, is what if they actually decided that with this remaster of Gravity Rush 2, they just do the 2 games together in a single pack. They just do Gravity Rush Collection. I hope they would do that, because that would make me super happy, because like I love Gravity Rush 1, I loved what I played of Gravity Rush 2, and they put both these games on PC, it will be glorious. Put them both on PC at the same time, instead of doing this, releasing 2, and then down the line releasing 1. I mean, I'd take it either way. I would buy it either way, because I really enjoy these games, and I think supporting great games is a great thing to do, especially because Sony is so bad about actually making unique games anymore, and these are some of the last few unique games that Sony have put out, but I digress. I know I interrupted you, so go ahead, anything else?
No, that actually is a great idea, like something that I wouldn't have thought about either. I mean, in a sense, it also kind of makes sense, because I mean, I don't know, they would probably, if they just sold 2, what would they do? Sell it for just say about what, maybe $30-$40? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like it would probably make more sense, because they wouldn't want to spend. They definitely, at least I would imagine, I would hope they wouldn't, sell it for $50 by itself. So I mean, I think also if they want to also, increase the sales, it definitely would help if they put the first one in there with it. So that would definitely entice people to actually buy it, instead of just saying like, well, we're just getting 1 game. No, you're actually getting 2 games. So that would help there. But it definitely is a good idea. I guess one last thing I'll say is just, if similar to you, I'm not expecting anything and not get my hopes up for anything, but if Sony does announce PC with PS5 for Ghost of Tsushima 2, the salt that would result from the fanboys. You, wow, you would never need to go to the store to buy some salt for shoveling your side for salting your sidewalk down. You would just be drowning in copious amounts of salt from the fanboys that you'd be set for life. You'd be cooking. You just get the salt from your fanboy pilot, just like put it right in there. There's just they would have a meltdown.
All you have to do is anytime you need to salt your sidewalk or anytime you need to season your food, all you have to do is just pull up some tweets, read them off, and then suddenly they'd be salted.
Just have your little fanboy shaker. Just go.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall though, I do think it is likely that we'll get some sort of announcement or some sort of showcase in May. So it will just be interesting to see what happens, what games are announced. So I'll definitely keep my eyes open for that.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I thought of, if they do bring the Nathan Drake collection over, is that assuming this whole save transfer thing works, which I meant to try out this weekend and I just haven't gotten around to do it. So I want to try doing it with Horizon Zero Dawn just to see, because it's like I beat the game already on PS4, and if I could transfer over my save, I'd have a bunch of achievements unlocked immediately. And then on top of that, I'd be able to, if I wanted to, do the New Game Plus, so I could do the ultra hard difficulty with all of the upgrades I have, rather than having to redo all that stuff. Because realistically, I will probably never replay Zero Dawn unless I can transfer my save over, because it's just not it's not worth it to me. Whereas with Forbidden West, of course, I started on PC. I keep my save on PC. I'll probably eventually end up going through that second time on ultra hard and just mainline it, ignore everything else, use all the upgrades I have and everything to get through. But yeah,
that's a very good point.
But I would really like to transfer my save from the Nathan Drake collection, because I mean the only thing I have is I made a bunch of progress in the first Uncharted game, but I was working towards getting all the achievements, or all the trophies in that, and I would definitely be willing to continue that pursuit on PC rather than having to boot up my PS4 to do it. Because the only reason, I bought the Legacy of Thieves collection when it came to PC, but I haven't touched it because I wanted to finish going back through the older Uncharted games and preferably trying to get all the platinum trophies on those. But if I can just import my save, then I won't even bother. I will say though, at least the PS4 version does run at 60 frames per second. So if I have to go back to the PS4 to continue that pursuit, it's not that big of a deal because they still feel good. It's just they don't have gyro aiming by default, so then I have to connect my Steam Deck to get that. And for the crushing difficulty, it's essential. I need the gyro aiming, because otherwise it's just way too difficult to aim properly. But anyway. All right. Anything else on that collection of topics there? All right. Let's see what else we got here. So you want to cover this thing about the Embracer Group selling Gearbox?
Sure. So, recently, Embracer released a press release saying that they were divesting Gearbox Entertainment for $460 million to Take-Two Interactive Software. However, there are a few caveats to this deal. Embracer is keeping several assets of theirs, including Gearbox Publishing San Francisco, which is going to be renamed, and prior to its closing, and before it was named Perfect World Entertainment, and that's also including the publishing rights to the Remnant franchise, the upcoming Hyperlight Breaker game, and other notable unannounced game releases. Embracer will also be keeping Cryptic Studios, including MMO titles like Neverwinter Online and Star Trek Online, Lost Boys Interactive, and Captured Dimensions. And so pretty much what they are giving over is Gearbox Software, the Texas studio, Gearbox Montreal, Gearbox Studio Quebec, and the Borderlands and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands franchises, as well as Homeworld, Risk of Rain, Brothers in Arms, and Duke Nukem. I can't. Well, I'll save that part for when I discuss it. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of things. There's a lot of other technical stuff and I guess other financial information there, but that's pretty much the main point. So I'll let you go ahead and start before I say what I want to.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of thoughts on this particular topic. The main thing I'm thinking is that it's probably a very good thing that this is happening, particularly because Embracer Group, while they've done some good things in bringing back a lot of like old games, doing lots of remasters and everything like that, the problem is that they've purchased so many things that they've ended up having to close a bunch of studios. Close studios, lay a bunch of people off. It's just been crazy what they've done, and I think it's very good that Take-Two is taking back most of Gearbox, especially for big franchises like Borderlands, because regardless of what how people feel about Borderlands 3, I think in general the opinion was that it wasn't as good as 2. The fact of the matter is that with the direction that Embracer Group has gone in general, I would fear that there could come a point when they would have to close down Gearbox, and then a franchise like Borderlands would just be gone. And regardless of whether or not the games are as good as they used to be, it's still a solid franchise, well-designed games, and for everything that might be wrong with the current game, they can improve it going forward by simply just doing some changes, doing whatever changes they need to do to fix it. And they can potentially put out a Borderlands 4 that ends up being a really, really, really good game. Could be as good as Borderlands 2, potentially. And yeah, I haven't been entirely impressed with Embracer as an overall thing. Just particularly seeing, what they've ultimately done by buying so many things and not really having a plan. So knowing that they're going over to Take-Two, regardless of, Take-Two's issues, it still is a good thing, ultimately, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah. You actually mentioned something that I didn't think about just because I have been a bit blinded by my disdain towards Embracer, but what you mentioned, which is a great point, is the fact that because Embracer has been shutting down studios, the fact that Gearbox has a chance to survive all these shutdowns and layoffs is definitely a good thing, despite the fact that, as you mentioned, it is going to take 2, but there still is just the chance that something good can come out of this, and the fact that the games, will still actually be there. So that is a good thing. This is a funny thing, and I can't remember, and this is just me going off what I think is memory, so I could be wrong with the numbers here, but the funny thing is the fact that Embracer is selling Gearbox for $460 million, and I believe they spent $1.6 billion when they bought Gearbox. So I thought that was very funny, but I think Embracer kind of deserves it, because I just don't like the fact that Embracer bought so many different studios. The fact that, and it's even crazy the fact that people were going after Microsoft when Embracer has been buying more studios than Microsoft and Sony combined. Yeah. That's insane that Embracer has gotten to this point. So I'm definitely glad that they are losing some of the studios and franchises that they had, because I thought that was ridiculous. I can't remember. I almost want to say that at some point they maybe were considering selling off, I think it was Crystal Dynamics. It was something.
But yeah, something like that. I can't remember specifically, but I think you're right.
Yeah, but it's just like they got so bloated that, you know, they didn't think about anything in the long run. Granted, of course, with stuff like the pandemic, no one could have foreseen that happening.
Right.
But, you know, they were just so focused on gobbling up everything that that they didn't actually think about, you know, protecting what they had already had. And so the fact that this has come back to bite them in the butt, well, I don't feel sorry for them on that end. But yeah, definitely interesting to see what happens with Gearbox going forward. And I mean, personally, I think it's kind of interesting that they kept games like MMOs that were pretty much just going to be more so just a steady cash flow of people just paying for subscriptions or microtransactions.
You know, when you talk about, you know, the way they were buying things up, it just, an analogy came to my mind. It's like someone who goes to a buffet and they just, because of how, you know, they go to a buffet when they're hungry, so they load up their plates with all this stuff that they want to eat, and in the end they can't eat all of what they grab, and so they end up just throwing stuff away. And that's ultimately what Embracer Group has been doing, is, you know, they kept going back for more plates of food, and then in the end they couldn't eat it all, so they had to throw some of it away, and it just went to waste. And that's basically, like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, any other thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
All right, well, speaking of old games being brought back, Knights of the Old Republic Remake. So this has had kind of a roller coaster of nonsense and shenanigans and everything in between. But for a long time, we basically, and I think we covered this in one of our previous episodes, have thought that this was essentially dead. That this was a project that was originally, like, they had plans for it, their plans sucked, they were sent back to the drawing board, and then it just kind of became nothing. But they are saying that it's still happening. So, let me just go ahead and bring up the article here from VGC, Video Games Chronicle. Saber Interactive CEO says that Knights of the Old Republic remake is still alive and well. So he interviewed with IGN, and this is after they split from Embracer Group. Hey, that's another reason why it's a great transition. And actually, they split last month, and I didn't even realize that. But Saber Interactive is still working on that. He says it's clear and obvious, or according to Video Games Chronicle, obvious that we're working on this. Well, they might have copied it over from IGN, so maybe it was IGN that did that. It's been in the press numerous times. What I will say is that the game is alive and well, and we're dedicated to making sure we exceed consumer expectations. Despite Karch's suggestion that the Knights of the Old Republic remake status is obvious, there have been questions around the game's development for some time. Billed as a collaboration between developer Aspyr and production partners Lucasfilm Games and Sony Interactive Entertainment, the remake was announced as a timed PS5 console exclusive during a PlayStation Showcase event in September 2021. And note that it was announced for PC at the same time. So, it's PS5 console exclusive, but it's PC at the same time. So we would get to play it regardless, if it's any good. So there's been lots of problems. Most recently, that there was that Aspyr had just stopped working on it. Embracer said that Saber Interactive was working on the game, and Bloomberg claimed it had been taken over. They had taken over the game entirely, and I guess Jason Schreier said back in November that he believed that it was still in development to an extent. Either way, it's definitely a to me it's still vaporware. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't happen. It could very well be a Duke Nukem Forever situation where it takes 14 years for it to come out. But by then, we'll be on the PS7 and I don't know. I have lots of thoughts on this, but I will let you go first.
Yeah, so something that I thought about in retrospect after reading the article was that, granted, we don't know what the state of the game is right now, but I just thought that I'm so glad that Aspyr is not working on this game in light of what happened recently with the Battlefront collection and how that was just an absolute mess. I'm just glad that they aren't working on this game, because if they can't even do a remaster, right, how could they do a full-on remake? But that doesn't necessarily, get Saber off the hook there, but yeah, I'm gonna definitely also need some more information on this game, considering the fact that it has been a while since, anything has happened. We don't know anything about the game. I think that something should be shown soon. And I mean, it's a bit of a granted, it's going to be a lose-lose situation either way, because if they don't show something, people will assume the worst. But if they do show something and the game's nowhere close to being finished, people are gonna ask why they showed something. And granted, I think this sort of goes back to a problem that a lot of these studios have, primarily these publishers have, is announcing games too early.
Yeah.
Because they announce these games saying, hey, here's the game we're working on, and nothing for a year or two. And then, hey, here's a trailer, here's some footage of game that we're working on that we announced way back, coming in the future. And then maybe a year, then it's like, all right, here's more of the game. It's coming out next year. So it's what, 5-6 years since they initially announced it. I mean, how long has it been since we heard about Good and Evil 2? Since it was first announced. So I think that was one of the biggest problems that started with this game, was just announcing it way too early.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, you don't know about what's going to happen with studios changing. I mean, first Aspyr was supposed to be working on it, but then that changed hands. And granted, I mean, looking at Metroid Prime 4, that was in Nintendo, I guess, of Japan or something like that, and then jump back to Retro Studios. Yeah, and I'm still waiting on that game too.
I hope it. Part of me hopes that whole supposed direct leak that we looked at was actually accurate, because I want to see Metroid Prime 4. Now, I mean, if the game never comes out, it's not gonna, completely ruin my life. I have more than enough Metroidvanias to play, but it's like all we've seen is a transparent PNG on top of an animated background. That's it. That's all we've seen of Metroid Prime 4. So we know absolutely nothing about this game, other than the fact that it takes place after Metroid Prime 3.
What? Guys,
I know,
you
right?
should have a spoiler alert or something there.
Right. But it's just like, I have such a hard time believing that this is anything other than vaporware. Now the fact that Saber has separated itself from Embracer Group is good. Just like what we were talking about before with Gearbox. But I just have such a hard time believing that this is going to go anywhere. And depending on who they have working on it, if they have someone as crazy as who they had previously working on it, then I have zero faith in the project, even if it comes out. Now, if they actually just like wised up and realized it's not a good idea for us to bring in this nonsensical political messaging and to just be true to the original game. I mean, like, they could they could just remake the game, keep it all the same, battle system, everything else, just make it look better, re-record the soundtrack, which is already excellent for that time. I mean, it was fully orchestrated. It was fantastic soundtrack. You know, just do that, upgrade the visuals, they'd be golden. They would make so many people happy. But I would even be fine with them, and this is probably what they would do anyway, making it more of an action game instead of being essentially dice roll. I mean, it's not quite dice roll to the same extent as Baldur's Gate, but it is more or less dice roll. But I expect it's going to be more of an action game. And that's perfectly fine. I think that modern audience would prefer that anyway. But either way, I would be happy with it. The problem is, I don't trust, number one, that this game is even coming out. Number two, if it comes out, that it's not going to be full of propaganda that I don't want in my game. Because Knights of the Old Republic, in my opinion, is the best Star Wars story. Hands down. It's still my favorite of all Western RPGs. I absolutely love the original game, even though the visuals have aged so poorly. Actually, I mean, they looked bad back in the day. They looked bad when it originally came out. They just did. I mean, there were PS2 games that came out earlier that looked better than that. But in terms of its story, its writing, like in terms of like dialogue and everything else, the music, just the combat, I mean, like, it was all so good. I would say the endings were pretty underwhelming. That was probably the one weak part of the whole thing, but everything else about it, absolutely stellar game. So I don't have any faith in this project at all, and they are going to have to do a lot to convince me that it's actually going to be worth my time and money, because I hold the original Knights of the Old Republic in such high esteem. That's all I got.
Yeah, and I forgot about the whole activist part originally. I guess I had that memory buried in my mind. So right. I mean, I guess it always is a possibility that they could resurrect that part, which I mean could be another reason as to why they've been radio silent, because they didn't want to, especially in light of Sweet Baby and everything going with that. Right. They probably wanted to definitely keep that under wraps, just because they were just like, we've already been, pretty much in trouble for delaying the game so much. We don't need this fiasco going on top of that. I mean, I definitely could hope that they will have learned from their mistakes, but, and granted, the different teams and studios and different media probably aren't all working together, so it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but based on what I've heard about the Star Wars Acolyte TV series, I'm not necessarily that doesn't necessarily leave a good impression upon me about like what could happen with the remake, so there is that.
Yeah, I just hope Disney has, if they are in fact truly genuinely remaking this game, that Disney does not have any fingers whatsoever in what they do with the story or the characters or anything else, because as far as I'm concerned, the current Star Wars is not Star Wars. It's just not. And even the stuff that was really good, like the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian and Rogue One, like I can't even think of them as canonical at all, or even worth my time. Especially because the fact that Disney made it so you can't even buy physical versions of The Mandalorian. You can only watch it on Disney Plus.
Oh gosh, I thought they.
You might be able to track down one somewhere that's like a different region, but you have to find the one that will actually play on any like Region 1 player, because some of them don't. And yeah, because like there was a point when I was planning to buy the seasons, but of course now, even as it stands, I'm not even sure if I want to, because of what they did with season 3, and then, basically any future seasons of The Mandalorian, it's not even going to be the same person as The Mandalorian anymore, because now he and Grogu are doing their own separate thing, and then they're making it a strong, independent woman who don't eat no man. Even though she was a previously established character, I know that she was in the Clone Wars, and she was fine, but then they had to take it 10 steps further, and just everything that they've been doing with all of this is just absolute trash, and I don't support any of it. I just want to go back to the Timothy Zahn books, because those were great, especially the Thrawn trilogy. And the audiobooks, super fantastic. I can't remember who it was that narrated them, but like he did a really good job imitating the voices of all the different people. Like I genuinely thought it's like he did a good Han Solo, good Lando, good Luke. I can't remember if he actually did Leia or if they actually had a woman do Leia. But it's like all these characters are really well done. Like it just felt like it was a genuine continuation of George Lucas's Star Wars, whereas the stuff that Disney has put out just doesn't feel anything like Star Wars anymore. Like it's something different, and even the stuff that was good still doesn't quite feel like Star Wars. It's just different, and I think it just doesn't quite have that same like charm. I don't know how to explain it. Like it's just such a different tone. Like Rogue One is a great example, because I liked Rogue One a lot, but even though it's supposed to lead into A New Hope, the tone is so just completely different that it doesn't feel like I can't watch them back to back, because then A New Hope feels like cheesy comparison, where I mean, it's just because it's so like dark. Rogue One was such a dark movie, and for everything I loved about it, it just doesn't feel like it quite fits. Even I mean, like the story wise, I like what they did with it. I just feel like the way that the movie felt in general didn't feel the same. And I mean, it's hard for me to say that, because I really, really like Rogue One. I think that it was a very, very well done movie. It just isn't quite Star Wars. I don't know. And then, of course, the sequel trilogy is complete garbage. But
yeah, that actually is a very good point. About I didn't even think about the fact that Rogue One definitely does not feel the same as the original trilogy, and it's worse. I mean, granted, you could definitely say the same thing about the original trilogy not feeling the same way as the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy feeling the same way, but at least with the prequel trilogy, that at least isn't directly, or I mean, it's connected, story-wise, but as far as the timeline, it's not close enough that you'll feel it too much. But if you're going to have a movie that takes place directly before episode 4, that it literally that ends where 4 starts, it is definitely a tonal shift with how it goes. So I definitely agree with that aspect. And granted, as you mentioned, a lot of movies now definitely feel Disney-ish. Like there definitely is something that you can sense and feel there, that is something that feels like this feels like a movie that was made by Disney, just because there's, I guess for one thing, there's always got to be some sort of joke or something. Like there's always going to be some sort of comic relief moment for one thing, or someone has to, I don't know, like it's something that I've also felt with, similar to the Marvel films. Like there's always got to be something that, I don't know, it just like some certain scenes where like it's fine if the scene was serious, but someone always has just like make a joke or something like that in the scene. There's some sort of like comedy relief moment where I'm like, that wasn't completely necessary at all. or something that's like, well, that just happened moments. And yeah, so I definitely agree on that aspect that those types of moments you can definitely tell that these films, especially in the Star Wars films, and I think that I felt this in episode 9. There was a moment I thought, this just feels so much like it was actually made by Disney, and it hurts. But yeah.
I will say I will defend the prequels. Now, I still definitely don't think that they're on the same level as the originals in terms of the overall quality, but I do think that they still feel like they're George Lucas's Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think that that's the one thing that separates them dramatically from the sequels, especially once you got to Last Jedi, which was just the trash of all trash. And I mean, like they all had their problems, but Last Jedi was by far the worst of the three. But I mean, like you have the thing that I think is good. Honestly, the humor is the main thing that separates George Lucas's Star Wars from the other ones, because the humor is a consistent where like this is an awkward situation sometimes, or this, like, things that are like, okay, this feels like, okay, this is the kind of thing that just happened, and but without them saying, well, that just happened. Without that stupidity that they have. I mean, I'm not saying that, oh, he's a comic genius, because he's not. No, not by any stretch. But the thing is that it still was like a consistent style of humor, where it almost felt sometimes like it was dad jokey. I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to explain it, but yeah, I still felt like the prequels at least still felt like a consistency with George Lucas's style of storytelling and his style of humor and everything else. And instead of, doing a your mom joke and turning every male character into a bumbling buffoon, and having Mary Poppins flying through space because apparently that's a thing now, or all this other, a purple-haired purple-haired admiral in a dress. I mean, the dress isn't necessarily the problem, because you had Mon Mothma in the original movies, but the purple hair, and I don't have to explain what I'm doing to you. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into Last Jedi, because I could rant about that movie forever. It's trash. There was only like one point when I initially liked The Last Jedi, and it was when I first watched it and initially was in denial. I was convincing myself that I liked it, and then I talked to a friend, and he reminded me of all the crap that was in there. and then I very quickly turned completely into, I hate this movie. And I would get into arguments with people on Twitter about it. Well, particularly just like one of my friends. And I just, eventually I had to like step away and be like, you know what? This is not worth it anymore. I spend too much time obsessing over how terrible this is. I'm just leaving it behind. It broke my heart though. Like, not like really, but to the point where I stopped caring about Star Wars, and then I started to care a bit with Mandalorian, and then I just went, and then they did the Book of Boba Fett and completely ruined his character, and then they did the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which I didn't even watch because of what I found out they did to his character. And they did episode 9 before that, which I already knew was going to be trash. I had stopped even trying to give the movies any chance once after The Last Jedi. I was just like, I wasn't getting fooled again. And then I found out about the entire leaked plot sometime before the movie came out, and it turns out it was 100% accurate. All the leaks were exactly accurate. And Just like, no, I'm not watching this stuff anymore. And then last year, I finally, after season 3 of The Mandalorian, I just canceled my subscription to Disney Plus. I bought all the Disney movies that I really liked, that I didn't already have. Got Blu-rays of all of those, ones that the kids like, and I'm leaving the rest of it behind and not touching it again, because there's nothing, as far as I can tell, that will give me a reason to go back to Disney Plus. Or to go back to Disney Star Wars. Especially when the latest thing they're going to put out is The Acolyte. Okay, I need to stop. I need to stop, because I just need to stop. We've been talking about this for a while. I think it's time to move on, and I don't have any more news topics for tonight. So, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we close out?
I think I'm good.
All right, recommendations and dissuasions.
All right, so I'm going to go back to something I talked about earlier this evening, and I recommend Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I cannot emphasize at what a great return to the Castlevania formula this is. It's a great game. It's sensational. There's some bonus modes in there that initially weren't there, but those are actually being added later on. One of them was the Zangetsu mode, which is pretty much the Belmont mode from Symphony of the Night, where you just play as Simon Belmont. Yeah. There's also a new character, I think who's from another indie game that they added in, so that there's another mode for that. There is a retro mode where you actually play in a style similar to the original pre-Symphony of the Night Castlevania game. So you do have those sort of like level-based, and you have the more stilted controls and stuff like that, but it's still using the textures and graphics of the actual game itself. So okay. I played a little bit of that actually is pretty interesting. I think there are even a couple other game modes. Oh, of course, there's the boss rush mode. But yeah, overall, it's definitely a very solid game. And even though I would really be interested in getting a sequel for this game, I do feel like the game ended in such a way where it's fine as it is, and if they never made another Bloodstained game, I mean, granted they had the, I guess, sort of spin-off games that was done by a completely different studio. I can't remember what the studio is, but Inti Creates, that's what it is. They made the Bloodstained 1 and 2, which was sort of like NES games that were more like the original Castlevania games. But if a mainline Bloodstained game was never made again, I'm fine with that. But if they did, I just hope it would be as good as this one, because it is a great game, and I can't recommend it enough.
Nice. All right, well, my recommendation is The Messenger. This is a game that I had been interested in for a while, of course, and ended up, obviously I finally got it because it was like $2 or $3, whatever it was. Very, very cheap. I don't know if you'll necessarily be able to find it for that price still. I'm not sure if the instant gaming sale is going on, but if you definitely, as a side recommendation to that, if you are a PC gamer, and even to a lesser extent consoles for Xbox and PlayStation, check out instantgaming.com. And last I was on there, which was several days ago, they did have that sale going on. They have massive discounts. Some games are like 90-95% off. So really, really cheap games. And The Messenger was, of course, part of that sale. And I've been enjoying what I have played so far. It's not an easy game. There's definitely... I've died lots of times. Especially against the last boss I fought. He took me a bunch of tries. Until I finally stopped being quite so aggressive and was a little bit smarter in avoiding his attacks and everything. But anyway, so yes, The Messenger is my recommendation. And dissuasions?
Dissuasion is going to be also going back do not buy the last case of Benedict Fox. It's just a poorly unoptimized game. I don't know how it's currently called the Definitive Edition when it's still got problems and there are still some
maybe
people...
maybe it's the best possible version that they have available.
I certainly hope not, but there are still some people who are also saying on the Steam forums that, you know, it still has some problems with performance, and the devs are still saying that they'll look into fixing that, which is a shame because having a Lovecraftian Metroidvania definitely seems like a good idea, but the execution, and something I didn't mention even earlier, was the fact that the controls are just a bit awkward. They're not what you would think you would have. Like, you have your regular attack button, but you have to hold down an attack to do a heavy attack, and in order to dodge, rather than do something like the shoulder button like you would in Symphony of the Night, you use the right stick to do a backwards dash. So that's
can you
really...
customize that at all?
You you can't do it. It seems to be like pretty much the controls are just locked to those. I mean, maybe you could configure it, but I haven't necessarily tried it, and I definitely didn't want to do it right in the middle of things. But granted, I was also trying just the game to run well. But I mean, you could probably get used to that, but on top of the performance, it's definitely something that I couldn't recommend. And I almost want to try just to see if I can squeeze my way through the game, because it's not necessarily too long based on what I've seen on howlongtobeat.com, but this might be a game where it's just like one of the handful of Metroidvania games that I actually don't finish. Yeah, just don't buy this game. It's not worth it.
Well, at least, I mean, if the developer says that they're looking into it, that's at least good. I just hope that they actually fix it.
That's good, yeah. But like the game has been out for over a year.
Yeah.
And just like,
right,
it was in a bad state then, and it still is kind of. So at least wait for it to get some more patches, and if you do get it on a good sale. Don't pay full price for this one.
Right. Yep. Well, my dissuasion is going to be, unless you are okay with only getting one game of the 3 games that are supposed to be included, do not buy the physical version of the Devil May Cry collection on the Switch. Because those codes, even with a new copy, do not work anymore. They are actually completely expired as of 2 years ago. Even if they gave a little bit of a grace period, they're expired now. They don't work anymore. So you will only get one of the 3 games, and you're going to be spending probably a minimum of $40 for it. Which, even if you love Devil May Cry, is it worth $40 to buy the Switch version? I mean, I haven't played it on Switch yet, so I can't say for sure what the performance is, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least if it's just 30 frames per second. Even though it should be 60 because it was a PS2 game. But I'll find out whenever I get a chance to test it out and see if maybe by some chance it actually performs as well as it should, because there's no reason why it shouldn't be 60 on the Switch. Except that it's Capcom. So. Yeah. Anyway, that's my dissuasion. Don't buy the physical version of Devil May Cry on the Switch. Alright. Anything else?
No.
Okay, so where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, iamxeracon. That's iamxeracon. So youtube.com/@iamxeracon. I finally put out my Why Would You Work for the Joker video over the past weekend. I'm finally glad to finally just get that out there, and that's there. I only just recently realized that this year is the 10th 10th year anniversary of my YouTube channel, or at least it was back in January. So even though I'm late on it, I gotta figure out when I'm gonna do this, but I'm going to have a live stream. I'm probably next Saturday, so that would be today's the 3rd. That would be April 13th. Not sure the time. Maybe it'll be around, I don't know, somewhere between noon and 3 o'clock. Somewhere around then. I'll make a post on my channel or something like that. Putting in officially putting the time in, but that'll probably be the day unless something pushes it back. So I'll most likely just do a little bit of gaming. Maybe I'll even watch a couple of my older videos just to see sort of how far I've come as far as the quality, and then also just the presentation overall stuff for my videos. So I'll see what happens there, and I also will possibly even do a few giveaways during the live stream as well. So there's that.
Cool. Well, I will do my best to remember to watch that. Of course, I'm sure the fact that you'll be reminding me, that you'll probably be mentioning it next week, should help me remember. Yeah, I'll definitely look forward to checking that out. Maybe even one of these times you and I can play some Helldivers together, since we both have that now, because it is fun multiplayer, or at least it was fun playing with randos. So I think it'd probably be fun playing and actually talking with someone. But either way, good stuff. All right, well, you can find me on YouTube at TheFrozenGamer87. The most recent video I put out was a comparison of BioShock Infinite for both the Switch OLED and the Steam Deck OLED. It's been doing pretty decently in terms of views, which is always great. It's interesting, doing those and actually watching the comparisons on top of each other when I was editing. I noticed that the Switch has better blues for, at least for that game. The blues are much more vibrant on the Switch screen than they are on the Steam Deck screen. But the Steam Deck has way more vibrant reds and oranges. Very interesting. Just something that I noticed. Of course, obviously, it performs significantly better on the Steam Deck, but it's still just kind of cool to look at the comparisons. The Switch version still looks really good. Even though performance-wise, obviously, it's 30 versus the 90 that you're getting on the Steam Deck. It still looks really, really good. So, very impressed with that. But, next comparison that's going up, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, is Nier Automata. The thumbnail I put out originally was the Game of the Year edition, Game of the Yorha edition, but I realized since it's actually two different versions of the game, because it's Game of the Yorha on PC, and then it's the End of Yorha on Switch. So I'm just gonna change the logo on that to just be just Nier Automata, and then explain in the description that it's the two different versions because they just don't have the same version. So, but Switch version looks decent, runs at 30 frames, but still plays really well. I had a good time. All the hours I put into it, which most of it has been on Switch, has been great, and it is a great OLED game because it looks great on the OLED screen. Even with the low amount of details and the lack of shadows, all that, it still looks good. It's one of the better looking of the downgraded ports. I'll just say that. Better looking and running of the downgraded ports. But that'll be the next thing going up. And then I do want to mention, and this will be the same also with our podcast here. Actually, I'll do that at the end. My other channel is my cooking channel, which is Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. The recent recipe I put out was for shakshuka, which I made the mistake initially in the video of saying that it was an Israeli dish, which it is traditionally. It is something that's eaten in Israel, but it's not. It doesn't originate from Israel, and it's actually eaten all over the Middle East and stuff. It's a very common breakfast, but it's It's really good. I ended up making it again last week before I put up the video this past Monday and recorded the different reaction to the second time I made it and remembered to put enough salt in it. And it was really, really good. I didn't do it with dipping bread in the mixture like you're supposed to. Mostly just because I wanted to try it as it was first. But I'll definitely do that next time. Either way, good stuff. My next recipe that's probably going to be going up is one of the pizza recipes. I haven't decided which one, but it's probably going to be my Philly cheesesteak pizza. So yeah, that is the next planned recipe to go up. I have a bunch more. I mean, like I think I'm getting down to maybe like the last 3 or 4 recipes I already have recorded, but I have like at least 2 or 3 different recipes planned to record in the near future, one of which is going to be jerk chicken tacos. And then another is probably going to be like jerk chicken Alfredo. Because I think that would be a really good. I've never done it before, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try doing it because, like, if I'm gonna make jerk chicken, I might as well make enough that I can do a few different things with it. Because I do have a really good jerk chicken recipe. Be very spicy, but very, very good too. And then going along with those, I finally decided, to help get our podcast some more views and listens, all that, just get some more reach, as well as helping out my cooking channel and hopefully also my gaming channel when I have time to work on that. I went ahead and created Facebook pages for both the podcast here for the Orange Box podcast and for my cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. So if you use Facebook, you can go ahead and go like those pages. Actually, let me look real quick and see if it actually has. I don't think it has the. Let me see if I can find what. So it doesn't have the name on there. I might be able to change that to actually have it displayed as the Orange Box podcast for that. But anyway, yeah. So I have those both up on Facebook now. And I'm planning to also make up Twitter accounts for those. The only purpose is just going to be to advertise the podcast, advertise my cooking channel, advertise my gaming channel. Just have those, anything that gets posted goes up. So, yeah, hopefully we can start getting some more reach across the board, advertise a bit. I'm not putting any money into the advertisement, but I am at least going to put those things up so that there's a chance that those could get more reach than they're currently getting. So it's just a matter of having time to do all of that and get all the links posted up and everything else, and like on Twitter start following people so that maybe I can get some follows back and then maybe people will actually check out our stuff, and that's how it can spread around and all of that. But anyway. All right. I think that is all I have for that. Any final thoughts before we are closing for the night?
No. I think I've got everything off my chest.
Okay. Well, once again, I forgot to write down an outro, so I'm going to do my best to wing it in this situation. But I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is iamxeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, buy some cheap games. Don't worry about your backlog. Don't worry about adding to it. Just buy some cheap games, especially if you're a PC gamer. Check out the Instant Gaming Sale. Check out any sale you can. If you can find some games for under $5, take advantage. Buy some stuff that you've been holding off on for a while. Orange Box Podcast.